What does it mean to raise a flag? For some, it is a ceremony, a tradition, a symbol of unity. But on this day, in the heart of the Sahel, raising a flag was an act of defiance. It was a message that could not be ignored. Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, 3 nations, 1 alliance, 1 future. As the alliance of Sahel states AES flags rose into the sky, the world witnessed more than just a political statement. This was a warning, a declaration, a breaking point. Standing before his people, Captain Ibrahim Traoré did not speak as a man under foreign rule. He did not beg for permission. He did not compromise. His words were clear. Africa will no longer kneel. For decades, they said the Sahel could not survive without Western aid, that it could not stand without foreign armies, that it could not break free from the chains of neocolonialism. But today, that illusion has been destroyed. This is the moment Africa stops waiting. This is the moment Africa takes back control. But how did we get here? What did Captain Traoré say that sent shockwaves through the continent? More importantly, is the rest of Africa ready to rise with him? Let's find out. For too long, African nations have been told that unity is impossible. The borders carved by colonial rulers are too deep to overcome. That historical rivalries, ethnic divisions, and economic disparities will always keep Africa fractured. That resistance to Western control is nothing more than a fantasy. But on this day, in the heart of the Sahel, 3 nations proved that every one of those lies was a carefully crafted illusion. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger stood together, not as isolated states, not as fragile governments struggling for relevance, but as a single force, bound by a vision that is bigger than any one leader, any one government, or any one ideology. This was not just a political decision. It was a fundamental restructuring of power in the region. For decades, alliances in Africa have been dictated by outsiders. Military pacts were signed under pressure. Trade agreements were written in languages that served foreign interests. Unity, when it existed, was fragile, always at risk of collapsing under the weight of economic threats, diplomatic blackmail, or military interventions. The AES changed that. This was not unity for the sake of appearances. It was unity born out of survival. Unity forged in fire. These 3 nations had been backed into a corner. Their leaders were targeted with sanctions, threats, and economic blockades. They were told to submit or suffer the consequences. But instead of breaking, they came together and allied stronger than anyone expected. The West had spent years keeping these nations apart, using regional conflicts, economic dependence, and military interventions to ensure that no real coalition could ever form. But in the end, the West's arrogance created the conditions for the birth of the AES. The moment one nation rejected the old system, others saw that it was possible. One country alone could be punished, but 3 together? That was something different. That was power. For the first time, an African alliance was built on a foundation of mutual strength rather than fear. The leaders of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger did not come together because they were forced to. They did not sign agreements that were drafted in European capitals. They did not seek approval from global financial institutions before moving forward. They made their own decisions on their terms. This was the kind of unity that Africa has been denied for generations, the kind that does not dissolve the moment Western interests are threatened. The effects of this alliance are already being felt. With the formation of the AES, the 3 nations immediately changed the balance of power in the region. Individually, they were treated as weak states, vulnerable to foreign interference. Together, they became an entity capable of dictating its future. Security forces now coordinate across borders, eliminating the loopholes that foreign-backed insurgencies once exploited. Trade agreements are being redrawn to favor African interests rather than multinational corporations. Resources that once flowed out of the continent at the expense of the people are now being managed for the benefit of the region. The message is clear. This is not temporary. This is not an experiment. This is the future of the Sahel. However, the most significant aspect of this unity is the message it sends to the rest of Africa. As Traoré also mentioned, the AES has shattered the myth that African nations cannot break free from foreign control. It has demonstrated that economic blackmail, military pressure, and diplomatic isolation are not death sentences. They are challenges that can be overcome. Other nations are watching. Some are skeptical, waiting to see if the AES will survive. Others are inspired, questioning why their governments have not taken the same path. The walls that once separated African states are beginning to crack. And once those walls fall, there will be no going back. This is not just about 3 countries. This is about an idea whose time has come. An idea that terrifies those who have built their power on Africa's division. Because unity means control over land, resources, and policies. Unity means the end of economic dependency. Unity means no more Western puppets dictating African futures. And that is why this alliance is more than a political statement. It is a direct threat to the system that has kept Africa in chains for centuries. Those who underestimated the AES are now scrambling to contain it. Propaganda campaigns are being launched to discredit the alliance. Diplomatic pressure is being applied behind closed doors. Threats are being made, disguised as concerns for regional stability. But none of it will work, because this unity was not built on empty promises. It was built on the shared reality of oppression, on the common goal of true sovereignty, and on the simple fact that Africa cannot afford to wait any longer. The AES is not asking for permission. It is not negotiating its right to exist. It is proving, in real time, that Africa's future will be decided by Africans. And for those who still believe that the continent will remain divided, weak, and dependent, one thing is certain: those days are over. But even if new alliances are being made, will Africa keep accepting aid? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. For centuries, Africa has been trapped in a cycle of false independence. Flags were raised, national anthems were sung, and new governments were formed, but real power never shifted. Colonizers never left. They simply changed their strategy. They rebranded control as partnership. They disguised economic domination as aid. They replaced direct occupation with corrupt local elites who served foreign interests instead of their people. The alliance of Sahel states has exposed this entire system for what it truly is: a fraud. Ibrahim Traoré, Assimi Goïta, and Abdourahmane Chiani did not just reject foreign control. They ripped apart the illusion that African nations are free. They tore down the idea that sovereignty means anything when policies are dictated by former colonial rulers. Their message was not just about rejecting foreign interference. It was about making it clear that neocolonialism is nothing more than a modern form of slavery. A system that keeps Africa poor while pretending to help. A system that extracts wealth while pretending to invest. A system that silences resistance while pretending to promote democracy. For decades, Western powers and their allies have controlled Africa through debt, military agreements, and political blackmail. The game has always been the same: offer development loans that trap nations in economic dependency, station foreign troops under the pretense of fighting insurgency, and fund opposition groups to destabilize any government that dares to resist. The goal was simple: keep Africa under control without needing to send in direct colonial forces. The AES is the first real resistance to this system in decades, not just in words, but in action. Traoré, in his recent speech, made it clear that foreign troops are no longer welcome if their presence serves foreign interests. France's military withdrawal from Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger was not just a diplomatic decision. It was a direct rejection of the military-industrial complex that has turned Africa into a battlefield for Western interests. These bases were never about security. They were about control. They existed not to protect, but to ensure that African nations remained weak, dependent, and in constant crisis. The AES has proven that Africa does not need foreign boots on its soil to maintain stability. It needs strong leadership. It needs self-reliance. It needs an end to the constant foreign interference disguised as help. The biggest tool of neocolonialism has always been the economy. Western corporations have controlled Africa's wealth for decades, using corrupt trade deals and financial institutions to siphon resources out of the continent. The AES is breaking that cycle. They are no longer selling their gold, uranium, and agricultural products at prices dictated by European markets. They are no longer allowing their economies to be controlled by the World Bank and the IMF, institutions that have crippled African nations with endless debt. By rejecting the financial chains of neocolonialism, the AES is proving that Africa does not need the West to survive. It is the other way around. When Western leaders say they are concerned about democracy in Africa, what they mean is that they are losing control. They fear a continent that governs itself, a continent that makes its own decisions, a continent that does not depend on European validation to define progress. That is why they have tried so hard to discredit the AES. They have called its leaders dictators. They have claimed that the alliance is unstable. They have warned that without Western oversight, Africa will collapse. But the reality is simple. The West is not afraid of failure in Africa. It is afraid of success. Because if the AES proves that true independence is possible, others will follow. And once that happens, the entire neocolonial system will begin to unravel. Other African nations will start questioning why they are still trapped in economic agreements that benefit foreign corporations more than their people. They will start asking why foreign troops occupy their land under the pretense of peacekeeping. They will start wondering why they are still exporting raw materials instead of building their industries. The rejection of neocolonialism is not just about policy, it is about identity. For too long, Africans have been made to feel as if they are incapable of leading themselves, as if they must always look to Europe, to the United States, or international organizations for guidance. The AES has shattered that mentality. It has been proven that Africa does not need to be saved by those who have exploited it for centuries. It has proven that Africa is not weak, that it is not helpless, that it does not need approval from the very people who have profited from its suffering. Western governments and their media are doing everything they can to paint this movement as dangerous. They claim that the AES is turning its back on the world, that it is isolating itself. That is making a mistake. But the truth is, Africa has been isolated for decades, not by choice, but by design. Western powers have ensured that African nations remain divided, dependent, and constantly struggling. Now the AES is forcing them to confront a reality they never wanted to face. Africa is waking up. Neocolonialism thrives on silence, on obedience, on submission. The AES is proving that Africa is done being silent. It is done obeying. It is done submitting. This is not just a rejection of foreign rule. It is a rejection of the mindset that Africa must always be controlled by outside forces. The fire has been lit, and it will not be put out. This is only the beginning. An important question here would be, is self-sufficiency possible for Africa? For decades, African nations have been told that self-sufficiency is impossible, that they must depend on foreign aid, foreign investments, and foreign expertise to function, that without the so-called support of the West, their economies would collapse, their infrastructure would fall apart, and their people would be left with nothing.
The first and most important is the economic structures. After colonization ended, we needed new structures to keep these countries where they were. Okay? And the first of those is aid. Okay, we give them aid. Aid for what? Actually, we give them aid to keep repressive regimes in power. That's all. Okay, we're not giving them aid for much more except a little bit of infrastructure to make sure those raw materials get to the ports and are gotten out of the ground. But for the most part, we give repressive regimes money and power and guns to keep that system going. This is what it's fundamentally about. All the hypocrisy about transparency and democracy and bullshit like that, it's all bullshit.
This lie has been repeated so many times that even some African leaders have started to believe it. But the alliance of Sahel states has shattered that illusion. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger are proving that self-sufficiency is not just possible, it is necessary. Traoré said true independence does not come from words. It does not come from raising a flag or singing a national anthem. It comes from the ability to feed your people, to power your industries, and to defend your borders. Without these things, sovereignty is just a performance. For too long, African nations have been performing independence while remaining trapped in systems that keep them weak. The AES is rejecting that model. Instead of waiting for foreign investors to build their economies, they are doing it themselves. Instead of relying on foreign food imports, they are producing their own. Instead of allowing multinational corporations to extract their wealth, they are taking control of their resources. Agriculture has been one of the biggest weapons used against Africa. Western-controlled institutions like the IMF and the World Bank have pushed African governments to abandon food self-sufficiency in favor of cash crops meant for export. Instead of growing food to feed their people, African nations have been pressured into producing coffee, cocoa, and cotton, commodities that serve Western markets while leaving local populations dependent on expensive imported food. This has created a system where Africa, one of the most fertile regions in the world, remains one of the most food insecure. Burkina Faso is changing that. Under Ibrahim Traoré's leadership, the government has begun providing cheaper fertilizers to farmers, ensuring that local food production can expand. They are investing in irrigation, land restoration, and modern farming techniques, not to serve European buyers, but to feed their people. Similar efforts are underway in Mali and Niger. The AES is rejecting the idea that Africa must import what it can grow itself, and they are proving that reliance on foreign-controlled food markets is not a necessity, but a choice, one they refuse to make any longer. But self-sufficiency is not just about food. It is about infrastructure, industry, and energy. For too long, African nations have been kept in a state of economic paralysis. They have been forced to export raw materials at dirt-cheap prices, only to buy back the finished products at outrageous costs. This cycle has ensured that Africa remains poor while the rest of the world profits from its resources. The AES is breaking this system by taking control of their industries. Mali is leading the charge in processing its minerals, reducing its dependence on foreign refineries. Burkina Faso is investing in textile production, ensuring that cotton grown in Africa is used to make clothes in Africa, rather than being sent overseas for manufacturing. Niger, a country rich in uranium, is rethinking how its resources are used, no longer allowing foreign corporations to dictate the terms of extraction. By processing and refining their raw materials, these nations are keeping more of the wealth inside Africa instead of shipping it away to be exploited elsewhere. Another major factor in self-sufficiency is energy. Energy dependence has been one of the main ways Africa has been controlled. Western corporations own the power grids, dictate the oil prices, and control the supply chains that determine whether African industries can function. A country without control over its energy is a country that can be shut down at any time. The AES understands this and is actively working to develop independent energy sources. Mali and Burkina Faso have begun pushing for greater investment in solar and hydropower, knowing that Africa's vast natural resources should be used to serve its people first. Niger, long exploited for its uranium, is reconsidering how its energy resources are managed. The goal is clear: to ensure that the AES is not at the mercy of foreign energy supplies that can be cut off the moment they refuse to comply with Western demands. Self-sufficiency is not just a goal, it is the foundation of real independence, and the AES is making it a reality. But does this mean Africa will isolate itself? Africa has always been forced into partnerships that were anything but equal. These so-called alliances were not built on mutual respect, but on exploitation, deception, and control. Western nations came with smiles, handshakes, and grand speeches about cooperation, while behind closed doors, they dictated the terms, set the conditions, and ensured that every deal benefited them first. Loans came with impossible conditions. Investment came with hidden strings. Military support came with expectations of obedience. Trade agreements left African nations at the mercy of foreign corporations. The Alliance of Sahel States AES is rejecting that entire system. For the first time, African nations are not entering partnerships from a position of desperation. They are entering them from a position of strength. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger are not looking for saviors. They are looking for equals. The old model of partnership, where Africa is expected to bow, accept, and comply, is over. From now on, the terms will be set by the AES. This is not isolationism, it is a negotiation. The AES is not cutting itself off from the world. It is simply refusing to be used. The days of blindly signing contracts that trap nations in cycles of dependency are gone. Any country that wants to work with the AES must come with honesty, fairness, and genuine respect for African sovereignty. No hidden agendas, no political interference, no secret clauses that strip African nations of their rights. The West is panicking. They see the AES refusing to beg, refusing to bow, refusing to accept their deals. And now, they are scrambling to respond. Suddenly, Western leaders are speaking about new partnerships with Africa, reforming old agreements, and listening to African voices. But it is too late. Africa has already learned the truth. It never needed to be dependent on the West. The West needed Africa to be dependent on them. Partnerships will no longer be dictated by those who have exploited Africa for centuries. Those who wish to work with the AES must come with a new approach, one based on mutual benefit, fairness, and respect. The balance of power is shifting, and the world is being forced to accept a reality they never wanted to see. Africa is no longer a pawn. Africa is no longer for sale. Africa is in control. Do you think more nations would unite? Can it save Africa's future? Let us know in the comments section. When will Africa unite and become a whole? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.